Students, we will start a new topic, the production of chronicles from the chapters Kings and Chronicles. So, chronicles we read that they are the written records of the historical events in a chronological order. So, when we talk about this chronicle, it was commissioned or produced by the Mughal emperor. So, it is an important source for studying the Mughal Empire and its court. So, what was the purpose behind the writing of chronicles? So, they were written in order to project or plan a vision of an enlightened kingdom. So, enlightened kingdoms, these authoritarian leaders, they exercised their political power according to the principle of enlightenment. It include a range of idea that is centered of the supreme power of authority with the primary source of knowledge and advances in idea of progress, liberty and toleration. At the same time, they were meant to convey to those who resist the rule of the Mughal Empire. Okay, all the resistance was intended to be failed. So the ruler they wanted to ensure that there was an account of their rule for their posterity, for the people who will exist in future. They want to keep the record or the account. So the author of the Mughal chronicles were almost and always the courtier. Okay, so one in attendance at a royal court. When we talk about the courtier, so the histories they wrote, it was focused on the event, okay, that centered on the ruler, his family, his courts, nobles, war and administrative arrangements. So here you can see three chronicles: Akbarnama, the story of Akbar; Shahjahanama, about Shahjahan; and Alamgirnama, it is a title given to Aurangzeb. So these chronicle, it suggests that in the eye of the author, the history of the empire and the court was same as the history of the emperor. Now from Turkish to Persia. So here you can see Turkish to Persian language. So in Mughal court, these chronicles were written in Persian languages. It flourished as a language of court and of literary writing. It flourished alongside, you can see, with the North Indian language Hinduvi, which is regional variation. So as the Mughal, okay, they were Chagtai Turk by origin. So the Chagtai Turks are the people who descended from the ethnic name of Chagtai Khan, son of Genghis Khan. So Turkish was the mother tongue. And when we talk about the first ruler, Babur, he wrote poetry and his memoirs, okay, or the biography in this Turkish language. So Akbar, he consciously set to make Persian, okay, this language, the leading languages of the Mughal court. So what motivated the emperor to adopt Persian languages? Maybe cultural and intellectual contact with the Iranians, Iran or the Persian. So and then you can see the migrants of the Iranian from Central Asia. Okay, so they want position at the Mughal court. They might have motivated the emperor to adopt the languages. So Persian language, okay, you can see during Akbar, you can see it was elevated at a height. It was kept in a top. As you can see, literary and it became literary and administrative languages. So it became the language of administration at all level, all the administrative work in Persian languages, so that accountant, the clerk and other functionaries also learn it. So where the Persian languages was not directly used, you can see here its vocabulary and idioms. It was heavily influenced on the language of Marathi and Rajasthani and even in Tamil. So in these regional languages, Persians, this vocab were used widely. And you can see that those who have command on Persian languages, okay, they were given high status and position or power in the Mughal Empire. So this Persian plus Hindi, okay, interaction between these two language, a new language, Urdu was carved out. Okay, a new language came called Urdu with the interaction of these two languages. So if we talk about Mughal Chronicle, Akbarnama, it was written in Persian. Babur biography, Baburnama, it was translated to Persian. And you can see translation of Sanskrit texts such as Mahabharata and Ramayana into Persian. It was also commissioned by the Mughal emperor. The making of manuscripts. So manuscripts are the handwritten records. So the you can see all books in the Mughal Indian were the manuscripts that they were written, they were handwritten, and the center of the manuscript protection was the Imperial Kitab Khana, and it can be translated as library where this manuscript were produced. So it was a scriptorium. Okay, it means the place where the emperor collection of manuscripts were kept. If we talk about this Kitab Khana, it's scriptorium, and new manuscripts were produced. So if we talk about the creation of a manuscripts, okay, protection of the creation of manuscripts, there are number of people performing a variety of tasks. So here you can see the need to prepare the folios of the manuscripts. Folios are the papers forming a series of an individual leaf or a paper. Then scribes and calligraphies. Okay. So calligraphy here you can see it set a skills and technique of inscribing the word. They copy the text. Then comes the gilder to illuminate the pages. So one who gild, it means that it overlay the things with the gold. So illuminate the pages with golds or glitter. Then you can see the painters to illustrate scene from the text, bookbinders to gather the individual folios and then set them in within the ornamental covers. So here you can see variety of tasks involved in the protection of the manuscripts. So this finished manuscripts, okay, was seen as a precious object, a work of intellectual wealth and beauty. So at the same time, you can see some of the people which are involved in the actual protection of the manuscript also got recognition, okay, in the form of titles. So they get titles and award, especially these calligraphies and the painters. They held a social standings, while other, if we talk about the paper makers or the book binders, they have remained unknown artisans. Here come the calligraphies, the art of handwriting. It was considered a skill of great importance. So it is practiced in different style. So here we will read a very important style. Here is Nastaliq. So here you can see a paper, a folio in the Nastaliq style. Okay. So the if we talk about this, it was in a fluid or style or in a flow with a long horizontal strokes. Okay, as you can see the words or the text, they are going horizontally from left to right. It's slant upward at a very slight angle. Okay, so this folio or the paper here in Nastaliq style, it's a work of Muhammad Hussain of Kashmir, one of the finest calligraphies at Akbar court, who was honored with the title Zareen Kalam, golden pen, okay, to recognize him for the perfectly proportionate curvatures of his letter. So it is written using a piece of reed, okay, which was trimmed. A wooden pen which are used for writing, it was trimmed with a tip of, you can see, 5 to 10 mm, okay, and here you can see, and this called kalam, it was dipped in a sihai. And here you can see when we talk about the nib, there was a nib, okay, which was split or cut in the middle. So the nib, it was cut at the mid so that it could absorb the ink. So now we talk about the painted image. Painters, they were also involved in the protection of manuscripts. So chronicles, it narrate the event of Mughal emperor reign. It contain images along with the written text to describe an event in visual form or visual expression. You can see when scene or themes in a books were to be given visual expressions, the scribe left blank spaces on near page. So if they include picture on the text, they left space for the picture. So the painter, he executed the visual form of the text separately and then inserted in the book. So these paintings were miniatures which could be easily pasted and viewed in the manuscripts. So painting, it not only enhances the beauty but it possesses special power of communicating ideas or expressing about the kingdom, the power of the king in the way that it couldn't be expressed by word, which could be easily expressed by painting. So the historian, here you can see Abul Fazl described painting as a magical art. In his view, it had the power to make inanimate objects look as if they possessed life. So the production of this painting or portraying the emperor, his court, people who were part of it was a source of constant tension between the ulma, the scholar, the Muslim scholars and the rulers. So as the portrayal of human being, this was totally prohibited by Islam. So this they described as incident from the life of Prophet Muhammad. Here the Prophet is referred as he was forbidden the depiction of living being in a naturalistic manner. So as they believed that they were taking the power of the creation, this was the function that believed to belong exclusively to God about creating the creatures. But you can see interpretations of the Sharia Islamic law, it changed with time. So the body of the Islamic traditions was interpreted by different social groups that best suit for their political needs. So many Muslim rulers, they commissioned artists to paint their portraits and scenes of life, okay, in their kingdom. If we talk about the Safavid king of Iran, he patronized the finest artists who were trained in the workshop set up at court or darbar. Okay. Behzad, a painter, he contributed the cultural fame of the Safavid court far and wide. So artists from the Iran, okay, they also made their way to India. Some were brought to the Mughal court as Mir Sayyid and Abdus Samad, okay, were made to accompany Emperor Humayun to Delhi. Others migrated in the search of opportunities to win patronage and prestige. So Akbar court historian Abul Fazl, he mentioned that the emperor as saying, there were many that hate painting, but such men I dislike. It's looked that an artist has a unique way to recognize God when he must come to feel that he cannot gift life as the God bestow life. So students, here we read important source about the chronicles